Welcome to another version of this Tom Green podcast. Once again, we're cracking open another episode of Tom Green Shows. On this episode, we have a Tom Green podcast superfan, Alex Dewitt.
Hi, Tom. Nice to be here.
He's in our studio this time. I can tell that he's cowering a little bit in fear as he's this close to the man, the myth, the legend that is myself.
Always. Always.
But that's the fortunate thing, but the unfortunate thing is the topic that we are about to talk about this time. And before we talk about that unfortunate topic, I'm going to hit, or maybe we should have Alex hit an ad real quick for our 3PS listeners.
Take a night off from Nights In. Find great seats for amazing events near you with StubHub's Fan Protect. Your order is 100% guaranteed. Buy and sell tickets safely and easily on the world's largest ticket marketplace.
StubHub, always a great option for tickets. But besides that, and we've come to you tonight when we have a unfortunate topic to discuss, and that is the Urban Meyer, Courtney Smith, Zach Smith situation. Talk to us. What's going on there? Give us a story.
Well, this is another unfortunate case of domestic abuse. It's still alleged by the court of law, but public opinion it's a first crack with the media reports. And currently we have repercussions from an administration at another Big Ten school that failed to make proper corrective actions to stop a dangerous situation for a living person. This time it's at Ohio State. Urban Meyer's in the hot seat. He's actually off the hot seat into the, I'd say, icebox for the thing, 3 or 4 games right now. And he's got to pay for his actions. They have to understand that you can't just go, well, I have to believe it and see it, instead of, well, I just don't believe it because the person that's under me just says, no, it's not a thing. If you are someone who is responsible for others in an organization like a college football team, you need to make sure that they are keeping it clean outside of your area. And it looks like Urban Meyer did not do that.
And one thing that Urban Meyer did say on Bill O'Reilly's show a few years ago was that he has a lot of morals. And that, well, he didn't actually say it on O'Reilly's show, but he said it a year later about the basketball scandal. If you lie, you shall never coach again. Well, it's looking like that statement is about to haunt you, Urban. Yeah,
that's a theme that we've seen in the prevalence of the recent uptick in caring about widespread domestic assault and sexual harassment allegations against people of some sort of fame, from politicians that have been that have lost or resigned from their seats to actors and producers and CEOs of companies. Now that these are becoming more prevalent and people are paying more attention to them, hopefully this time we'll get it right and we'll get everyone on or enough people on the same page where we can stop this from happening to others. I mean, we've seen it happen the last couple of years to big personalities, but the truth is we need to change it for everyone. That's from everyone who's from living in a trailer park in the backwoods of Kentucky to someone living in a penthouse apartment in Philadelphia. It's got to come from everywhere. And this is hopefully the start of a widespread cultural adjustment to better ourselves as humans and Americans.
And that's a big part of the Me Too movement. Just before we started recording this, I had watched the Courtney Smith interview with Kristen Balboni, Balbiz, and I did want to make a comment on that might not have been commented on before, even in court of law or court of public opinion. I noticed that Smith has a bit of a lisp, and I felt that was probably because of the abuse. She couldn't really articulate her S's well, and like instead of, or like words like that, she couldn't really articulate them well.
And see, I want to put out there, as not a linguist, that although that is a possibility, Tom, it is possible that that is just something that they have dealt with their entire life. Although it looks bad considering the situation that she's been in, and it is possible. It is not a guarantee, and that's the thing with the code of opinion. We see this now, and we see it out in the open. It's possible they had these problems before they hit a radio or a TV program, but it's possible they did not, and that's what caused it. So although that is a factor for people to look at and understand, it should not be their only factor in determining if it is true or not.
Okay. And I also wanted to read a tweet from Andy Burr at ABurrOSU1, and it's got 3 pictures worth of text inside of it, and I wanted to read those so that we could hear the story, from both opinions. So the text goes: she called 911 66 times in 90 days. She got pulled over 3 times for DUI. On each time, they let her off and escorted her home. Each time she began crying and stated Zach was chasing her and she was afraid. Each time Zach was at practice. 911 actually stopped sending squads because they stopped finding her credible. They came numerous times with 911 verifying Zach was engaged in OSU activities. In Zach's and her court hearing, the Powell police are testifying on his behalf. She has come to OSU practices numerous times drunk, chasing after Zach, threatened to blow people up, and other various threats. She never worked, and when divorced, lived off of Zach's child support. When Zach was fired, she realized she would lose income and freaked out. She reached out to anyone. She was asking 6 figures for her story. No clue on credibility, but this is floating around from my coworker who is OSU alumni and connected there still. Our friend is a personal friend of Urban. This information supposedly came from Urban. Thought you would like to know. And that, now I may have read that off course, I guess, but still part of the text. Urban is looking at a 3 to 4 game suspension, mostly because of the Me Too movement and the appearance the university must give. Many members of the university have known about both her and him for quite some time. They never acted on information because there was never any proof of guilt one way or the other. Photos are from 2010 in the interview with Bell Biz, accordingly. Photos are from 2010. There is no proof the harm was caused by him. Anything can still happen, but they decided to suspend Urban with pay to separate the media frenzy from the practices. Apparently there is no proof of anything. Just 2 crazy people who should have never been together pray for their children. Now, do I believe that? Not necessarily, but I just wanted to throw that out there so that there was both sides to the story.
And with what we've seen in the other regional large universities with assault and abuse issues in the past few years, both Penn State and Michigan State, Joe Patino at Penn State and Larry Nasser at Michigan State, both of them had these, not in this form for Penn State, but a little bit for Michigan State, how, well, this was just going on and nothing actually happened. So we see all this stuff. We have all this documented stuff that didn't happen, but then they go to the actual court cases with Sandusky, as Patino passed, and Nasser, and found out that, yes, that actually is what happened. Even though there was points that could be validated against it, there's a lot of stuff that was left out from the people who were defending the people covering this organization. So, was Urban Meyer physically assaulting this person? No. That's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at overseeing the conduct of the people who you are overseeing. If you are an employer, you have an employee who's had a run-in with the cops a few too many times because of something like this, you're responsible to a point to make sure that you're getting everything you can done. You can help that employee better themselves so they can, in that turn, work better for you. It's a very watered down and hard way to look at it, but that is the minimum of what Urban Meyer should have been doing in this situation, I believe.
And let's not forget that Urban Meyer was also the coach when Riley Cooper and Aaron Hernandez were both at Florida. Had to deal with those 2 personalities. Yeah,
a lot of baggage carried up, but as I've seen in a couple of postings over the past couple days about it, they said it's a culture change, which is partially true. We have seen an increased public caring about domestic assault in our country, but that doesn't excuse him for being part of a different situation, and us as Americans 10-ish years ago just going, well, it's okay because it wasn't technically him. It still was, and we need to figure out how to make it equitable. I mean, obviously that's past. Those people have gone on to court for their misgivings. Mm-hmm. But you have to think that maybe Irvin was let off too easy last time, and he needs to have the correct, not the overreaction, the correct, I can't think of the word for this, brought up to him for this situation. He doesn't need to be made an example of for his past ones. We know about them, but he needs to be reprimanded correctly for this specific situation.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to play any of the interview from Balboni's interview because it was 19 minutes long. However, I will play Laura Rutledge's reaction on Get Up from, I think it was this morning or yesterday morning. I liked what she had to say, 1:26 long, courtesy ESPN.
As we continue to discuss this, I think there are so many important things that need to be said about this. Courtney Smith, first of all, deserves a lot of credit for her bravery, for coming out with this, first of all, for leaving that situation, which was dangerous to her and potentially dangerous to her children. As everyone tries to gather facts here, as we all try to figure out what went on, and Ohio State conducts their investigation, certainly what's alleged is that maybe Urban Meyer knew about this. We'll find out more if he actually did. But what's not alleged is that Courtney Smith is a victim. She is a victim of domestic violence, and domestic violence is not a troubled marriage. It's not some sort of marital issue that can be solved by counseling. It's a crime. So she has a restraining order against Zach Smith that was granted to her by the police. 75% of the time, when a woman is killed by a partner, it's because they were leaving the relationship. And the partner could be estranged, like it was in this case. She left and was very afraid of that. I also have seen places where people have talked about it being a tragic situation. What's tragic in this situation is that Courtney Smith dealt with domestic violence for an extended period of time, a serial offender of domestic violence. She called the police 9 times. That's the tragedy in this, not what could happen with Urban Meyer's job.
And I will respond to that and say that I have taken a gender and studies class at SVSU, and she's very right that a lot of relationships like that, they have cycles. You have the honeymoon stage, which is like, okay, this will get better. I promise you. And then something gets troubling, whether it's the relationship or it could be practice, in fact. Then the abuse, and it's wrong. Then the apologies, the crocodile tears, the oh my gosh, I did that, I'm so sorry. Well, truth is, and Dr. Amy Pierce did say this to me, and I agree. It's just tough to leave those relationships, but they have to be. You have to leave, because how will things get better for her?
Yeah. And from a law enforcement standpoint, my wife took it as a bachelor's in criminal justice, and that was one of the things in her classes when they talked about police interactions with communities. When the police come, when someone calls and they're trying to leave the relationship and it gets heated, someone usually calls the cops. Usually it's a woman who calls the cops, but when the cops get there, those domestic situations are the most dangerous, actually. Not, hey, I heard a gunshot. It's, hey, I'm yelling at my significant other and I need to get out, but I'm afraid of them because they don't know what's going to happen. He could snap when he finds out that she called the cops. She could snap when the cops get there, thinking that she has backup, or they could both snap and be fighting each other in the lawn. And depending on what they have in their house, it could get dangerous for people around there quickly. We actually had in our hometown
Bay City, Michigan,
two police killed back in the late 80s from that. They were walking up to a domestic in town. They got the call, they walked up to the door, and the guy thought it was, if I remember the story correctly, thought it was friends coming up to help her, and he unloaded a clip through the door. They had no time to react. That's the kind of stuff that the criminal justice side has to pay attention to. If they gave her this restraining order, they knew something was up. They didn't know what specifically, but they knew something was up. So that right there would be a big red flag for not seeing what's happening.
Mm-hmm. And I will also add that back around the 80s, actually, perhaps around that time, my mother was actually in an abusive relationship. To that, now she has been very secretive about it. She is secretive to the point where she hasn't told me much about it at all. In fact, I heard it from my dad. But I'm just making people aware that this happens everywhere. This is, and a lot of times, unbeknownst to people like you and I.
Yes. There's things in the background that you have to pay attention to if you notice. If you're someone who just goes around, hey, how you doing? And then you just go, yep, they're talking to me. I'm just going to keep going on with my day. You're not going to see the signs. It's going to be something slow and gradual. These people who are having this situation at home try to hide it a lot of the times. They try to, that cycle you were talking about, Tom, they try to just go, well, I can get this back around. I need to make sure that I can get this back around correctly. Now, in the age of social media, it's harder to hide that because people get heated and they fire off a Facebook post, tweet something on Snapchat to people about how they hate this person, and then 2 days later they're back to loving them again. And that's the cycle. Those are the signs that you can see from just glossing over your friends list. So there are signs there for us to help our friends and our communities around us to make sure this doesn't happen or get the people who are causing this to stop. But it takes a proactive community approach. This isn't just a, hey, this person is related to this person, so this person must be doing this. No, it's all of us working together, trying to work together to figure out how we can eliminate this from our society.
Mm-hmm. And at least I was taught, I'm sure you were taught as a kid, you never hit a woman, you never touch a woman, etc., etc. Just don't.
No means no.
Exactly. In fact, California a couple of years ago, and now I don't talk politics a lot on this show, but of course I'm not a huge California politician guy. But here's something I do actually tend to agree with those people. They're trying to enact a yes means yes,
and that would be actually, in theory, better. The only problem they're going to have with that is the time it takes for a culture change. Because we've seen it in our generation growing up. We're both in our 20s. When we were young, it was still very much...
When we were young and your heart was an open book. Shout out to the Beatles.
You could still see in the movies and songs from the day that were popular that the men still controlled a lot of things. Now, it's not as bad as, say, the 1950s or even pre-World War II. But since then, we've progressed. We've become more equal. But I don't think we're still there yet. This is one of those things where people go, well, everyone has equal rights. Everyone can do everything that they want to. But not really. That may be your specific point of view. But as long as a majority of people in this country feel like there is a disconnect in equality, we're going to be having these major headline stories about inequality in terms of, in this case, domestic violence. Mm-hmm. And because a hypermajority of domestic violence is men against women, it does happen the other way, but very rarely. Men against women, until we can curtail that, teach our future generations to correct the mistakes that we might have made, or create better guidelines for our children to follow. This is something that is going to take a while. That yes means yes is great. We just have to hope that enough people can tell their kids and tell themselves that they need to change.
Mm-hmm. And adding to your point about sometimes it can be the other way around. Now, this doctor was not a woman, but pulling up a New York Times article that says more than 100 men have now said they were molested by Dr. Richard Strauss, a doctor at OSU from the late 1970s to the 1990s, according to an investigation commissioned by Ohio State. So not only does it happen to women, it happens to men too. Now that's more of a molestation and assault. So someone to like Dr. Nassar, However, it happens both ways.
Yes.
Is my point. So now that talk has been sealed.
Needed, but I'm glad we got that out there.
Mm-hmm. Let's hit another ad before we talk about something a little more fortunate. I'll do this one this time as Alex is drinking his pop. Let's hope it's pop.
It is.
Okay. JohnnyShades.com is all about the rock and roll experience. I'm going to edit that out. Okay, JohnnyShades.com is all about the rock and roll experience. A luxurious lifestyle brand that is affordable for anyone. Stylish sunglasses, watches, and more. All with free shipping anywhere in the world. Hit the ad on our site to find the accessories that fit your style. So now let's move on to a little more fortunate thing, and that is the preseason top 25. Now on my computer I pulled up the CBS top 25, as that was the one I read on the Michigan football HQ website on Facebook. Alex is pulling up the ESPN website, so there will be slight differences, but they are mostly they have all 25 teams.
Plus, we have our own opinions on where people fall, which will slide them a little bit. But
which I always think Michigan should be number one, but obviously that's just delusional Tom.
Yes.
So,
I mean, in general, your top four on both of them, I think that's pretty much a consensus by most rational college football fans. Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Georgia. Now, with the Ohio State thing, that may change, but there's no way to tell. They have a lot of talent there, no matter who the coach is. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how much difference that'll make. But
I mean, last year when I was at Michigan, Ohio State, J.T. Barrett got hurt.
Yes.
Dwayne Haskins was in. I thought, oh my God, Michigan might actually win this game. Wasn't meant to be, as J.K. Dobbins still ran all over them.
Yes. And I think aside from a crazy injury early in the season, I think those four teams are going to be the ones to beat. The odds of us having two SEC teams roll into the playoffs this year, I don't see it as much. I think Georgia's going to be a little bit weaker than last year. They may have the schedule, but they don't have the division to lock it up without beating Alabama during the season. Outside of those teams, I mean, Oklahoma lost their quarterback. Everyone's saying they're better elsewhere, but I don't know if the Big 12 is good enough competition to keep them up there. Same thing with the Pac-10. Washington's good.
Pac-12, but we always call it Pac-10.
Yeah, I'm a little too...
See, we're both old school here.
Yeah, I think Washington will win that. I don't see USC or... I'm not Washington State, but definitely not Oregon State. But I don't think Texas is going to be as good as people are saying. I think it's going to be a pretty crap conference. So, yeah, Washington will win, but at what cost? Everyone else has Wisconsin in the top 10, while that part of the Big Ten is known as the weak side right now. Mm-hmm. It's going to be that way for a few more years, because until Ohio State starts dropping and even Michigan and Penn State start dropping, you have three solid teams on the other side that are going to pretty much win it, I think, every year, barring a fluke. Mm-hmm. SEC is still stacked. I like Auburn just because they're not Alabama. I like Tennessee just because of the checkerboard, but that's neither here nor there. Kentucky has a checkerboard too, but it's not as cool of a color scheme.
There aren't any Rocky Tops around here.
No.
So,
and I mean, ACC, Clemson. Who's behind them? Who knows? That's kind of in the story the past few years, and that's going to be the same thing this year. Last year, I thought, Florida State's going to do really good, and then Florida State did absolutely nothing.
And then all of a sudden, the U came out of seemingly nowhere.
And will they continue that? Will their chain of turnover chains, can bring them back to the top there? I don't know. All the statistical analysis said that Miami got lucky, because the odds of them getting that much positive turnovers and winning those games, they got lucky, I think, in a few situations. As for the Big Ten, the conference that we hail from, literally.
Yep. Hail to the victors valiant.
Michigan State and Michigan are kind of flip-flopped between the two major preseason polls. Michigan State has I can't say his name. Lewerke. I had it right. Okay, yeah, he is coming back. But I don't know how good the rest of the team's going to be at Michigan State. They had a lot of problems last year. A years of development can help, but a years of development can also go nowhere. We've seen that before with Michigan. They get a year's development, and then they just stagnate. That was a higher level between those 2 years that I'm thinking of than I think Michigan State will do. But I don't know if Michigan State will be that good. Michigan, if they can find a quarterback and they can plug that offensive line, yeah, they'll fight Ohio State for the title.
We got Shea.
But will that be enough? If Michigan State is that good on the upswing, then maybe not. I mean, we know it by now. Harbaugh has not been good against rivals. He broke the curse against Iowa, which is a really small curse from his playing days. So, I mean, that's like nothing. He's one game against Michigan State, and they were supposed to win by almost 30 points that game.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's also 2 plays and 15 seconds away from being 3-3 against those rivals.
And even then, 3-3 from a school that has as many demands as Michigan is not successful. It's better. It's tolerable by more people, but it's not acceptable. Because it's been how many years since Michigan's been relevant in the national scene? Like, actually relevant, not just, oh, hey, they're on the outside looking in. No, like, actually relevant, fighting for one of the spots in the college football, fighting for a BCS title game prior to that. It's been years. It's been too long. Harbaugh's brought the program up. But has he hit his ceiling in Ann Arbor? This will be the deciding year, I think. I think if he does not make it into the Final Four, or at the very worst, a New Year's Six Bowl, and win it, I think he will be serious talk about him walking away or getting the boot.
And I was saying the critics of our Michigan team that year 4 has always been the year where Harbaugh has either made it or broke it in the certain steps that he has taken. Like USD, he's perhaps made it. Stanford, he's made it. San Francisco, he's broken it. Well, that trend saying it's going to break, but hopefully I am wrong. I am wrong. But in that case, with Shea coming, I'm very excited for this team because Shea's coming. If we were still stuck with the 3-headed not so monster of Spate, Peters, and O'Korn,
that was rough.
This would be at best an 8-4 year. With the tough schedule, probably even a 6-6 year. But with Shea here, if he in the offensive line plays to their potential, I could see a college football playoff in their future. But of course, depends on the rivalry games as well.
Now, if we look at the bottom part of the top 25s from both of these lists, you can see some inserts that I thought personally were kind of strange. Virginia Tech, yeah, they were better, but I don't think that's sustainable. And I mean, that conference is so up and down. I don't see Virginia Tech being as relevant as they're saying. CBS has them at 17. And for the non-power conferences, Notre Dame's still in the conversation. I think
they'll always be because they're Notre Dame.
Yeah, but all it takes is one bad game against an opponent that just happened to not have a game that week, who's not a good team, and they're gone. I don't think Notre Dame, in the current playoff scenario, has a chance to make it into the top 4. If they expand it to a 6 team, like an NFL style, then maybe. But I don't think the top 4 is ever going to be reasonable for Notre Dame without being in a conference, which is against everything Notre Dame stands for football, and making a stand. Other ones near the bottom, Central Florida, I don't think it's going to happen again this year. I think their magic's done. I'd like to see USF go up just because I like the bull logo. But,
yeah,
I mean, I don't think Central Florida is going to be able to keep up the push to make it into could they with an undefeated record kind of thing. And then you have Boise State, who's been like the no more Cinderella of the group of 5 conferences. They're always good. Well, can't say always, but they're always in the conversation at the beginning of the season because they're in Boise State. They're going to do something special. They're going to pull an Oklahoma Liberty play again. But they just, again, weak conference, 4 spots. The current situation does not lend to anything higher than a New Year's Six Bowl, which obviously someone's going to get. Maybe it'll be someone from the MAC this year. That'd be cool again.
Yeah, see Western do it again.
But I don't see, outside of maybe the top 8 on both. Oh, again, Miami, I'm not really positive on making a serious push. This list seems pretty straight out, and that's one of the problems that people said when they came out with the playoff system, is that, well, you're going to have all the preseason stuff, look at where people are, everyone's going to have a preseason bias, and then results won't matter as much as the old BCS point system, which was substantially flawed. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I can't see that. I can see this being another repeat. This is turning into the NBA Finals. Guess who's going again? Oh, look, it's the same teams.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they solved that problem with LeBron heading west. But in this case, until Dabo Swinney or Alabama recruiting, because I think it's recruiting more than the coach over there, just fails for 2 or 3 years, I don't know what we're going to have. It's going to be a pretty boring playoff from the preseason view looking forward. Mm-hmm. Now, if 3 people get injured on Alabama's team week 1, hopefully they don't, because injuries are bad. But if something crazy like that happened, yes. But as it stands, no.
Yeah, at least commenting on the NBA point, at least the Eastern and Western Conference Finals both went 7 games.
Unlike the finals, which won't for another 5 years probably.
But, yeah, right now you have Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State as your playoff matchups per se in this poll. That would be like, oh, great, the same 4 teams again. The same cycle continues. Jazz music stops, according to a meme that Alex and I have shared before. Jazz music starts. Jazz music stops.
Yeah.
But in that format, oh, boy. Harbaugh has said, it should expand to 8 teams, which I actually agree with at this point, but it's not. But it's also been ridiculed as, it's Harbaugh. He's never made the playoff for the Big Ten title game. Well, guess what? If D'Antonio said it, you wouldn't be saying that. So you know what? Shut up, Clay Travis.
That's why I viewed the add 2 as the equalizer. You'd have the Power 5, their champion guaranteed, and then a wild card. So that play you could have a Notre Dame more than likely. You could have a group of 5 team come in if they've done really well, an undefeated Western Michigan squad, preferably Central Michigan, but Western Michigan's okay.
Roll the boat.
That's Minnesota now.
That's true.
Or you could have UCF go like they were actually in serious conversation last
year.
We
are the national champions.
Yeah. So I think 6 would be a good compromise. You have 2 teams that would get essentially BCS pointed themselves into a free week, which would annoy the other 4 fan bases. But I think that would be the most equitable way to allow diversity in the college playoff. I mean, is that a lot more games for some of these kids? Yes. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem that has to do with the NCAA's system right now, and the length of preseason trainings and the requirements to keep your scholarship and all that other stuff that this show is not doing. But I think that is the most equitable way for the college football playoff to have diversity, because you saw the BCS system, for all of its flaws, you usually had 2 different teams. Usually one was an SEC team, but they were usually different teams. Mm-hmm. We haven't really had that. I mean, we swapped out Michigan State for Ohio State, and Georgia was only in it. I think it was only this year.
Just this year, yeah.
Alabama, Clemson. Oh boy, here we go again.
We also had Florida State and Oregon in the first playoffs.
Oregon,
but that was because of Mariota and Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
Which that's a different story for another day. Is Jameis Winston? Oh my God. But I agree and disagree, and I will say that. I feel they should extend to 8, and the reason is let's have that group of 5 team in without them having to worry, and have 2 different wild cards. But then you also get the point of how far shall you expand, and I think 8 is the cutoff. I always at one point I wanted 16. Now I'm like 8, and we're done.
Yeah, because you see the problem with going any farther than that is you have more games than some NFL teams play actual games. Like you're up against that line where you have these kids who are 18, 19 playing a season as long as an NFL season essentially, and that's not good. I mean, yeah, they're getting great experience, but we've seen problems with head injuries, which the system's working on fixing in some universities and teams. You have fatigue in general. These kids have classes they have to pass, and we're not talking paper classes from North Carolina that I still think actually happened.
Yeah.
But these are actually kids going to college, and we need to focus on that too. If we focus all of this athletic on expanding seasons, it's going to get crazy. So we have to find a good equilibrium.
Yeah, and adding to Alex's point, Jordan Poole, freshman at Michigan, hit the game-winning buzzer shot against Houston in the round of 32. The Monday after that, he had to turn in a Greek mythology project.
Now, is that an actual class at U of M, the size of that school? Probably. Mm-hmm. But is that fair to those athletes who don't know when they're going to be playing the next game because they have to wait on a previous game for them to determine what's going on? Not really. And that was the big plus of the old bowl system, unfortunately, was that, yeah, you'll have one more game, and it'll be sometime in the next 3 or 4 weeks, and your finals will probably be over. But now we have the playoff to make the championship more equitable, so we don't have, Nebraska saying that they got the national championship and Miami saying they got the national championship in the same year and all that crazy stuff. So
97, Nebraska and Michigan claiming that they have the championship.
And it's like, yeah, we solved that, but now we have to find an equilibrium for everybody. And I think the NCAA is getting really close to putting too much on the students, especially the ones who didn't know about all the extra requirements heading into it.
That's very good. I guess we'll wrap this up with one more question I have for Alex, and I'll answer as well. A couple days ago, Sports Center and Sports Nation, all that, came out with the best championship teams in college. Which one do you think was the best? We're talking, of course, like 2001 Miami, 2014
the BCS Plus.
Yeah.
I have to say, Vince Young's team.
2005 Texas,
I remember that year being a Michigan fan, and they did pretty good, but it wasn't their best year in that system because I know they lost a couple of those games. But I think that was the year that gave Vince Young all the power he needed to make a good start in the NFL before he, like so many other quarterbacks from all over the country as they enter the NFL, flop. It happens, but he had a great showcase season. He did everything right in that season. It just didn't translate to the NFL for him. And because of that, I think people overlook him as a college player, much like people overlook Barry Sanders' college career, even though he did really well in college. People overlooked that because of his success in the NFL and all the highlight clips from back then.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying 2005 Texas? I'm gonna kind of go the easy street route and say 2000 Miami, because their roster was pretty much an NFL squad.
That's true. That's true. I'll give you that one.
If you have a basically NFL squad as a roster, I might as well. We need to find a way to somehow have that team play like the Browns of this year, the Lions of 2008. Let's actually see if college players can compete with the pro players. And the answer is probably not. But still.
Hey, they tried it a couple times. It didn't end well for anybody.
But still, 2001 Miami, the real turnover chain. I'm flashing the U in the studio. But so, that is our discussion on from different topics to domestic violence to top 25 polls to best college team. Once again, we had our super fan, Alex Dewitt here. Kind of like the Bill Swerdsky super fans here at Ditka's in Chicago.
Except I'm from Michigan, so not the same.
So that is our podcast for this time around. Be sure to tune in within the next couple of weeks for Lions-Raiders preview, Lions-Giants preview, also a Michigan football player preview. So always content coming from the Tom Green Studios. Thanks, Alex, for joining us for this great show.
Good to be here.
And we hope you've enjoyed another edition of the Tom Green Podcast.